In a world obsessed with comfort, convenience, and instant gratification, the pursuit of pleasure has become a guiding principle of modern life. But what if this relentless chase is not leading us to happiness, but instead to enslavement? Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, warned of a dystopia where people willingly surrender their freedom for pleasure, numbed by entertainment, drugs, and endless distractions. Today, his vision is more relevant than ever. From social media addiction to consumer culture, modern slavery is no longer enforced by chains. It is embraced through desire. In this video, we'll explore how pleasure, when unchecked, can become the very thing that destroys us. In Brave New World, Aldous Huxley paints a chilling picture of a future where the pursuit of pleasure has replaced all other human values. Unlike George Orwell's dystopia, where society is kept in check by fear and oppression, Huxley's vision is far more insidious. In his world, the population is not forced into submission through violence, but rather, they are willingly subjugated by their desires. In this society, happiness is manufactured, and it is the absence of suffering that defines well-being. People are conditioned from birth to crave superficial pleasures, such as drug-induced euphoria, shallow relationships, and mindless entertainment. The irony is that, in this world, people are free from pain, but simultaneously enslaved by their unrelenting search for gratification. In many ways, this idea of pleasure as a form of control is remarkably prescient, especially when we examine our own culture today. We live in a time where indulgence is not only encouraged, but celebrated. From social media algorithms that feed us tailored content to the constant stream of new products and experiences, we are constantly bombarded with ways to gratify our desires. And much like in Huxley's world, we are so consumed by these distractions that we barely notice how much they shape our lives and thoughts. The illusion of freedom, of choice, is central to Huxley's critique. In reality, we are not as free as we think. We are trapped by our own desires, controlled by what we believe we want, but unable to break free from this cycle. The paradox of pleasure is that while it can provide temporary relief and satisfaction, it does so at a cost. In Huxley's world, the pursuit of pleasure is not a path to fulfillment, but a form of sedation. It numbs the human spirit, leaving people emotionally and intellectually adrift. This emotional numbness is perhaps the most dangerous consequence of unbridled indulgence. People who seek only pleasure lose the capacity for deeper experiences such as love, passion, and genuine joy. These emotions require struggle, sacrifice, and effort, the very things that a pleasure-centric society wants to avoid. Without the ability to confront hardship and engage in meaningful work, life becomes a series of fleeting distractions, each one barely enough to stave off boredom and emptiness. In this way, the pursuit of pleasure leads to the very thing it tries to avoid: despair. The human brain is wired to seek out pleasure and avoid pain. This is a survival mechanism that has been honed over thousands of years. Dopamine, the brain's feel-good chemical, motivates us to repeat actions that bring us pleasure and rewards. However, in a modern context, this system can be exploited. Technology, especially social media, apps, and entertainment platforms, is designed to hijack our dopamine systems. Every notification, every like, and every new post triggers a small burst of dopamine, creating a cycle of addiction. We are drawn to these platforms not for any intrinsic value they offer, but for the momentary pleasure they provide. The more we engage with them, the more we want. But the more we consume, the less satisfying it becomes. This diminishing return on pleasure is a hallmark of addiction. We have also seen the rise of dopamine fasting and other wellness trends aimed at controlling the effects of overindulgence. These practices acknowledge the neurochemical imbalances created by our addiction to pleasure and offer a way to reset our systems. But the fact that we need such interventions in the first place speaks volumes about how deeply embedded pleasure-seeking behaviors have become in our daily lives. Our brains are constantly bombarded with stimuli designed to provoke desire, and in many cases, these desires are artificial and superficial. Just as Huxley's characters in Brave New World are conditioned from birth to seek pleasure, we, too, are conditioned by the forces of modern capitalism and technology. We are encouraged to consume, to distract ourselves, and to constantly seek out the next hit of dopamine, all while ignoring the deeper and more meaningful aspects of life. This addiction to pleasure can have dire consequences for our emotional and mental well-being. While short-term pleasures may bring temporary satisfaction, they do not offer lasting fulfillment. True happiness comes not from the pursuit of pleasure, but from the pursuit of meaning. In Huxley's dystopia, the characters who are most deeply trapped in this cycle are often the ones who have no sense of purpose, no deeper connection to anything beyond their own immediate desires. This is where modern society and Huxley's vision align. In our own world, many of us find ourselves adrift, constantly searching for something to fill the void. We reach for our phones, binge-watch the latest show, or buy things we don't need, all in the hope of finding meaning in the superficial. But as we indulge, we only dig ourselves deeper into a hole of dissatisfaction and emptiness, as each new pleasure fails to provide the lasting satisfaction we crave. We live in a culture that celebrates instant gratification, but this comes at a high cost to our mental health. Addiction to pleasure is not just about drugs or alcohol. It's about the everyday habits and routines that keep us trapped in cycles of shallow satisfaction. From the moment we wake up, we are surrounded by temptations designed to pull us in. Social media notifications, advertisements, and the lure of instant convenience. Our constant connection to the digital world makes it harder to escape the cycle of pleasure-seeking, trapping us in a constant state of stimulation. This constant barrage of external stimuli makes it difficult to focus, to think deeply, and to truly connect with others. It is as though we have traded our mental and emotional well-being for a few moments of fleeting pleasure. We are enslaved by our desires, and the more we give in to them, the less free we become. The paradox of pleasure is not that it is inherently bad, but that it becomes dangerous when it is pursued at the expense of everything else. The more we indulge, the less we appreciate the things that truly matter in life. We are so busy chasing pleasure that we forget to stop and reflect, to engage with the world on a deeper level. We become like Huxley's citizens in Brave New World, chasing after the next distraction, the next dopamine hit, without ever stopping to ask why. In doing so, we lose the ability to find meaning, to connect with others on a genuine level, and ultimately, to experience true fulfillment. In our society, the addiction to pleasure is reinforced by a culture that encourages us to believe that happiness is something we can buy or consume. Whether it's the latest tech gadget, a vacation, or a new relationship, we are conditioned to think that the next big thing will bring us happiness. But this cycle never ends. Once we have the thing we thought would bring us joy, we quickly begin to look for the next thing, and the cycle begins again. This constant pursuit of more is exhausting and ultimately unsatisfying. True contentment is not found in the external world, but within ourselves. It comes from cultivating a sense of inner peace and purpose, from engaging in work and relationships that nourish the soul. But this requires effort, patience, and self-discipline, qualities that are increasingly rare in a world obsessed with instant gratification. The pursuit of pleasure, if left unchecked, can lead us to a life of emotional and spiritual emptiness. Throughout history, rulers and societies have recognized the power of distraction as a means of controlling the masses. The ancient Romans, for example, provided their citizens with bread and circuses to keep them content and distracted from the hardships of life. Bread, a symbol of sustenance, and circuses, representing entertainment, were tools used to placate the public and maintain political order. As long as the people had enough to eat and were entertained, they were less likely to challenge the status quo or demand more from their rulers. This strategy worked because it allowed the ruling class to maintain power by minimizing discontent, all while people were kept distracted from the true state of their world. In many ways, this ancient strategy of keeping the masses distracted through indulgence and entertainment has evolved into a far more sophisticated and pervasive system in modern society. The technological revolution, the rise of social media, and the explosion of consumer culture have created an environment where distraction is not only accepted, but encouraged. Today, rather than bread and circuses, we have a constant barrage of digital content, from viral videos to streaming platforms, news feeds, and online shopping, all designed to keep our attention fixed on the next fleeting moment of pleasure. We are perpetually entertained, constantly scrolling through updates, likes, and notifications, filling every spare second with something new. The power of these distractions lies in their ability to flood our brains with instant gratification. We live in an age where entertainment is never more than a few clicks away, and the pursuit of pleasure has been elevated to a near-constant state of being. The dopamine-driven design of modern technologies, whether it's the thrill of a new video, the satisfaction of a completed task, or the validation of a like, has created a society where we feel compelled to consume these pleasures without pause. This flood of constant stimulation, much like the bread and circuses of the past, keeps us from reflecting on our deeper needs, desires, and struggles. It numbs us to the realities of our lives and surroundings. One of the most concerning aspects of this phenomenon is how it affects our ability to engage in meaningful, reflective thought. In a world saturated with constant distractions, many people find it difficult to focus for extended periods. The digital age has rewired our brains in ways that have made it harder to concentrate on anything that requires sustained attention. Instead of reflecting on our lives or pursuing deep intellectual or emotional connections, we are conditioned to seek out new distractions the moment our attention wanes. The idea of sitting with our thoughts, without the aid of external entertainment, has become foreign to many. And when we are confronted with a quiet moment, we may feel anxious or uncomfortable, prompting us to reach for our phones or turn on the TV to fill the silence. This compulsive need for distraction is not merely a benign quirk of modern life. It has profound consequences for our mental and emotional well-being. It prevents us from fully experiencing the present moment and robs us of our ability to be present in our relationships, work, and personal growth. Instead of engaging in deep, meaningful activities, we are often caught in a cycle of superficial consumption. We prioritize the immediate pleasure of the next notification or the next show over long-term fulfillment and personal development. Over time, this pattern can lead to a sense of emptiness, as the short bursts of pleasure fail to provide the lasting satisfaction that comes from engaging in deeper, more meaningful pursuits. Moreover, these distractions are not neutral. They are designed with one goal in mind: to keep us consuming. The systems that underlie modern entertainment, social media, and consumer culture are built on a business model that thrives on our attention and our desires. Companies, apps, and platforms are carefully engineered to keep us hooked, to make us return again and again, searching for the next fix of pleasure. The more we consume, the more they profit. This creates a vicious cycle in which we are increasingly controlled by our own habits and desires, while the industries behind these platforms grow more powerful. In a sense, we become participants in a system that uses our attention, our data, and our desires to fuel its own expansion. We are no longer just consumers of entertainment or products. We are commodities ourselves, feeding into a larger machine that thrives on our distracted, pleasure-seeking behavior. At the societal level, this addiction to distraction and instant gratification has far-reaching implications. As people become more absorbed in their own consumption, they may become less attuned to the world around them and less likely to engage with the pressing social, political, or environmental issues that require attention. The constant need for entertainment and pleasure leaves little room for reflection or action on important matters. This detachment from reality can contribute to the erosion of civic engagement and social responsibility. Instead of focusing on the collective good or addressing systemic problems, many people become absorbed in their personal bubbles of distraction, concerned only with the next fleeting moment of pleasure. This pattern is also evident in the ways in which people relate to each other. In a society obsessed with instant gratification, many relationships have been reduced to transactional exchanges, where the primary goal is to seek out immediate pleasure and avoid discomfort. Social media, for example, offers a platform for people to present curated versions of their lives, often focusing on the most pleasurable and visually appealing moments. This creates an illusion of perfection and contentment, which may lead to feelings of inadequacy or envy in those who compare their own lives to these idealized images. Genuine, deep connections, built on vulnerability, trust, and shared experiences, are often overshadowed by the superficial interactions that social media encourages. This, in turn, can contribute to feelings of loneliness and isolation, even as people are constantly connected to one another online. In the pursuit of pleasure, we also risk losing the ability to tolerate discomfort and challenge. Many of the most meaningful experiences in life, whether they come from personal growth, building relationships, or creating something of value, are not easy or instant. They require effort, persistence, and the willingness to face adversity. Yet in a culture that glorifies instant gratification, the discomfort of struggle is often avoided at all costs. People may shy away from difficult conversations, challenging work, or personal growth because they are conditioned to seek out the easier, more pleasurable path. This avoidance of discomfort can stunt personal development and prevent individuals from reaching their full potential. It can also lead to a society that lacks resilience, as people are ill-prepared to face the inevitable challenges of life. Ultimately, the pursuit of pleasure through constant distraction and indulgence leads to a profound disconnection from ourselves and the world around us. We may find ourselves in a state of perpetual distraction, unable to focus on anything meaningful or lasting. We may lose sight of what is truly important in life, our relationships, our work, our purpose, by constantly seeking out the next source of pleasure. In this way, the very pursuit of pleasure can become a trap that limits our potential, both individually and collectively. By filling every moment with distraction, we deprive ourselves of the opportunity to truly experience life in its depth and complexity. The more we chase after immediate gratification, the further we move away from the deeper satisfaction that comes from engagement, struggle, and growth. In the end, the pursuit of pleasure may be the very thing that prevents us from living fully. When pleasure becomes the primary goal of life, it sets us on a path that ultimately leads to emptiness. The allure of instant gratification is seductive because it promises relief from discomfort, but it comes at the expense of deeper fulfillment. The more we chase pleasure, the more we find that it offers only temporary respite from the internal struggles that we try to escape. The constant pursuit of pleasure can numb us to the larger, more meaningful aspects of life, and over time, we may find ourselves caught in a cycle where our sense of purpose and satisfaction erode, leaving behind a feeling of hollowness. The fundamental problem with the pursuit of pleasure is that it is fleeting. The pleasure derived from an immediate experience, a delicious meal, a new purchase, a social media like, is momentary. When we seek pleasure as an end in itself, we are essentially chasing an illusion. We temporarily feel good, but that feeling is soon replaced by a craving for more. This constant need for the next high, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, can create a cycle of dependency. What we once found satisfying no longer suffices, so we continue to search for greater and more intense experiences. This pattern is seen in everything from addiction to consumerism, where the pursuit of pleasure gradually spirals into an insatiable hunger for more. As we continually seek out these short-term pleasures, we begin to lose sight of what truly nourishes the soul. Deep satisfaction, the kind that transcends momentary pleasure, often comes from experiences that require effort, patience, and sometimes even suffering. The growth of a meaningful relationship, the mastery of a skill, or the pursuit of a long-term goal, these are all endeavors that take time, dedication, and sometimes discomfort. Yet, in a society that values instant gratification, these deeper pursuits are often overlooked. The desire for pleasure in the form of ease and convenience tends to overshadow the things that offer long-lasting fulfillment. We forget that it is through struggle, perseverance, and self-discipline that we ultimately find true joy, the kind that cannot be bought or manufactured. The absence of this kind of deeper satisfaction can lead to a pervasive sense of emptiness. When we prioritize pleasure over meaning, we find ourselves constantly searching for something to fill the void within. This emptiness is not always immediately apparent. It can lurk beneath the surface, masked by the constant consumption of pleasures. We might distract ourselves with shopping, entertainment, or digital engagement, but eventually, these distractions no longer mask the underlying discomfort of a life lived without purpose. The truth is that without meaning, pleasure is hollow. It becomes a temporary escape from something we don't want to face. The deeper questions about who we are, what we value, and what truly matters in our lives. As we continue to indulge in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures, we may also become disconnected from our authentic selves. When everything is geared towards satisfying external desires, we lose touch with our inner needs, values, and aspirations. We become so focused on meeting the expectations of society, culture, or our own compulsions that we forget to ask ourselves what we truly want or need. This disconnection from the self can leave us feeling lost, as if we are living a life dictated by external forces rather than one that is consciously chosen. We may accumulate wealth, experiences, or accolades, but without a sense of purpose or direction, all these external markers of success can feel meaningless. It is as if we are racing towards something, but we don't know what that something is. The result is a life that feels fragmented, lacking coherence, and without a sense of fulfillment. Furthermore, the pursuit of pleasure at the expense of deeper values can lead to a loss of resilience. Life is inherently difficult, filled with challenges and struggles. The desire to avoid discomfort by seeking constant pleasure prevents us from developing the strength and character needed to face adversity. When we never allow ourselves to experience discomfort, we become ill-equipped to handle the inevitable hardships that life throws our way. Our ability to cope with difficulties, grow through challenges, and bounce back from setbacks is diminished. Instead of learning from our struggles and becoming stronger, we turn away from them, seeking solace in the next pleasurable distraction. This avoidance of discomfort weakens our emotional and psychological resilience, making it harder to endure hardship when it comes. The result is that we become more fragile, more dependent on external pleasures to cope with the stress of life, and less able to confront the difficulties that arise. In addition to these personal consequences, the societal implications of a culture focused on pleasure are equally troubling. When the pursuit of pleasure is the driving force behind our actions, it becomes difficult to sustain meaningful relationships or work toward the collective good. In a world where everyone is preoccupied with their own desires and distractions, there is little room for true connection or collaboration. Relationships that are built solely on the exchange of pleasure, whether romantic, familial, or friendships, are often shallow, unsatisfying, and fleeting. These connections, while initially pleasurable, are not grounded in deeper values such as trust, mutual respect, and shared purpose. They may offer temporary fulfillment, but without a foundation of meaning, they cannot stand the test of time. At the same time, a society obsessed with individual pleasure tends to prioritize personal gain over the common good. When people are preoccupied with satisfying their own desires, they may become less empathetic to the needs and struggles of others. The broader issues facing society, such as inequality, environmental degradation, or social justice, can easily be overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of personal pleasure. We may be so absorbed in our own lives, filled with distractions and indulgences, that we forget to look beyond ourselves and address the collective challenges that we face as a society. The more we focus on personal pleasure, the less we are able to focus on the well-being of others or work toward solutions that benefit the larger community. The pursuit of pleasure also contributes to the perpetuation of unsustainable consumption and environmental degradation. In a world driven by consumerism, the constant quest for new products, experiences, and indulgences fuels a system that depletes resources, harms ecosystems, and creates waste. The cycle of consumption, driven by a desire for more and more pleasure, places immense strain on the planet's resources, leaving future generations to deal with the consequences. As we chase after fleeting pleasures, we fail to consider the long-term impact of our actions on the environment, and we continue to exploit the world's resources in ways that are unsustainable. The more we indulge in pleasure, the more we contribute to the destruction of the very systems that sustain life. The crux of the matter is that while pleasure is not inherently bad, it becomes dangerous when it is elevated to the status of the ultimate goal. When we prioritize immediate gratification over long-term fulfillment. When we become addicted to the fleeting highs of pleasure, we lose sight of the deeper sources of satisfaction that life has to offer. Meaning, purpose, and connection are the antidotes to the emptiness that comes from the pursuit of shallow pleasures. By focusing on what truly matters, building relationships, working toward personal growth, and contributing to the greater good, we can find fulfillment that transcends the hollow pursuit of pleasure. But this requires a shift in perspective, an acknowledgement that true satisfaction is found not in the fleeting moments of pleasure, but in the ongoing process of living a meaningful and purposeful life. Only by breaking free from the cycle of superficial indulgence can we reclaim our sense of purpose and find the lasting fulfillment we seek. The concept of modern slavery is one that extends far beyond the traditional image of people bound in chains or held in captivity in physical spaces. It is not limited to human trafficking, forced labor, or the abuses that happen in some of the world's poorest regions, although these forms of exploitation certainly exist. In the context of a consumer-driven society, modern slavery manifests in subtler, more insidious ways. This form of slavery is not always physical. It is psychological, emotional, and societal, tied to a system that manipulates people into believing they are free while they are actually enslaved by their own desires and addictions. The pursuit of endless pleasure, particularly through material consumption and digital entertainment, is the chain that holds so many individuals captive, even though they might not recognize their own imprisonment. At its core, modern slavery in the context of pleasure is about control. The powers that be, whether they are large corporations, social media companies, or advertisers, have created a world where people are constantly manipulated into wanting more. This desire to consume, to always seek out the next pleasurable experience, is not something that arises naturally from within individuals. It is something cultivated through carefully designed systems that target our deepest psychological needs. The pleasure we seek is no longer a choice but a compulsion, a drive so strong that we become entrapped in a cycle that we cannot escape. The very act of pursuing pleasure, under the influence of these systems, becomes a form of slavery because it is no longer a free choice. It is a response to manipulation and conditioning. The way these systems work is subtle, yet profoundly effective. Advertising, for example, has evolved into an art form that knows how to appeal to our emotions and desires with precision. The people behind marketing campaigns understand human psychology better than most, using sophisticated techniques to shape our behavior. They know exactly how to make us feel inadequate, how to create a sense of scarcity, and how to convince us that we need their product or service to feel fulfilled or validated. The more we buy into these illusions, the more we become enslaved to the idea that our happiness is contingent upon consumption. This is the essence of modern slavery, the belief that pleasure in the form of material goods, status, or external validation will somehow provide lasting happiness. But the reality is that no matter how much we consume, we are left wanting more, trapped in an endless loop of desire. This process has been further exacerbated by the rise of social media, which has created a digital environment where pleasure is available at the touch of a button. Every swipe, click, and notification provides a small burst of pleasure, keeping us engaged and wanting more. The algorithms that power these platforms are designed to capture our attention and hold it for as long as possible, feeding us content that aligns with our interests, desires, and fears. We are encouraged to present curated versions of our lives to the world, often showcasing only the pleasurable moments while hiding the struggles and disappointments. This creates a facade of constant happiness and success, one that we compare ourselves to, leading to feelings of inadequacy or envy. But instead of using this awareness to reflect on our own lives and values, we become obsessed with the pursuit of more likes, more followers, more experiences, more external validation. The very structure of social media fosters a sense of dependency, as if our worth is directly tied to how much we are seen and liked. This becomes a form of emotional slavery, where people are constantly seeking approval from others through the validation of their online persona. It is no longer about authentic connections or self-expression. It is about maintaining an image, a performance, designed to elicit the next rush of pleasure in the form of likes, comments, and shares. This is a precarious and hollow form of satisfaction, one that is built on the foundation of comparison and external validation, rather than internal fulfillment and true connection. Even beyond social media, the digital age has created an entire ecosystem of entertainment that feeds our need for instant gratification. Streaming services, video games, and other forms of digital entertainment are designed to keep us hooked, offering us constant access to new content, new experiences, and new pleasures. These platforms use sophisticated algorithms to suggest content based on our viewing habits, ensuring that we never run out of things to watch or consume. While these services can provide temporary enjoyment, they ultimately keep us passive and disengaged from our lives. We lose hours, days, and even years to binge-watching shows or scrolling through endless feeds, all in the pursuit of fleeting pleasure. What begins as a way to relax or unwind soon becomes an addiction, as we feel compelled to consume more and more in order to maintain that initial high. This addiction to digital pleasure is further reinforced by the way these platforms capitalize on our fear of missing out, FOMO. We are conditioned to believe that we must always be up to date with the latest trends, the hottest shows, the most viral content, or the latest celebrity gossip. This constant need to be in the know, to consume everything as it happens, ties us to a world that moves at an increasingly rapid pace. We no longer have the luxury of taking our time or reflecting on what is truly important. Instead, we are swept along by the current of endless entertainment, unable to disconnect without feeling disconnected from the world. In this way, the pursuit of pleasure is not a choice. It is a necessity driven by the fear of missing out, the fear of being left behind in a world that values constant engagement and consumption. The result is a profound sense of disconnection from ourselves, our values, and the deeper aspects of life. We spend so much time chasing pleasure that we fail to ask ourselves what it is that we truly need. Instead of pursuing goals that are meaningful and fulfilling, we settle for shallow distractions that offer only temporary relief from the discomforts of life. In the process, we lose touch with our true desires, the things that would bring us lasting satisfaction. We forget that true fulfillment comes not from external validation, but from self-acceptance, personal growth, and the cultivation of deep, meaningful relationships. In this way, modern slavery is not just about the literal enslavement of people in oppressive conditions. It is about the psychological, emotional, and societal chains that bind us to a system that profits from our addiction to pleasure. It is about the ways in which our desires are shaped and manipulated to keep us in a state of constant consumption, never truly satisfied, and always seeking the next high. The more we chase after these superficial pleasures, the more we become enslaved to them, trapped in a cycle that prevents us from finding true happiness. The key to breaking free from this modern form of slavery is to recognize the ways in which we have been conditioned to seek pleasure and validation from external sources. We must learn to question the assumptions that underpin our desires and to rediscover the deeper sources of fulfillment that lie within ourselves. This requires cultivating self-awareness, understanding our true needs and values, and developing the courage to make choices that align with our authentic selves. It also means learning to embrace discomfort, to sit with our emotions and thoughts without immediately turning to distractions, and to prioritize long-term goals and personal growth over short-term gratification. By doing so, we can free ourselves from the chains of modern slavery and begin to live lives that are truly fulfilling, grounded in meaning and purpose, rather than the fleeting pursuit of pleasure. Ultimately, the modern world offers us countless opportunities for distraction and pleasure, but these opportunities come at a cost. We must be willing to face the discomfort of self-reflection, to resist the pull of immediate gratification, and to invest in the deeper, more meaningful aspects of life. Only then can we escape the cycle of modern slavery and begin to live authentically, free from the invisible chains that have been placed around us by a society that thrives on our consumption and dependency. True freedom lies not in the pursuit of pleasure, but in the pursuit of a life lived with purpose, intention, and self-awareness.